Do you need discipline to do the carnivore diet? Well, yes and no. I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So whether you've been doing the carnivore diet for a long time or you're just thinking about starting it, a lot of people get to the point where they want to get better and better at it. Some people have been doing the carnivore diet for a really long time, but they've only been doing it like 80%, 90%, maybe 95% or 99%, right? Like I have to be strict 100% because I have a sugar and carbohydrate addiction. So if I give in a little bit on it, I just go all out. So I have to be really strict without a lick, taste, or bite of anything off of a carnivore diet. But if you're starting a carnivore diet, it's a bit of a different story because once you get to a sweet spot with carnivore, it's typically easy for people to maintain a certain discipline. It's like climbing a mountain. Once you're at the top, there's really not that much work once you're up there, right? It's pretty easy. The danger is when you try and get back down. But if there's one thing I've always heard from people who even hear the idea of a carnivore diet and they're limiting themselves just to meat, and that's it, the one thing they say, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They say, oh, I can never do that. Well, why is that? Oh, I can never give up my bread or my wine or whatever it is. And I understand that to a certain degree, but that's because they just haven't gotten to a point where their pain or whatever the issue is that they're dealing with, maybe they don't even have much of an issue. Maybe they have a good balance to their lifestyle as it is. Until they get to the point where they need to make a change in their diet to manage usually pain or some autoimmune disorder or their weight, they don't see the point in doing it. And so they'll keep on doing whatever has worked or not worked for them. But the one thing they're not ready to do is just start a carnivore diet because they convince themselves that it's too difficult. Well, I come from an Italian background, so giving up pasta and breads, and especially the breads, I could do without the pasta, quite frankly. I like it, but the bread, oh man, that was my favorite thing, especially a good Southern Italian bread. Nice crusty bread, and you dip that in some sauce. That was the kind of thing I just would drool over. I preferred that more than pasta. That was a lot for me to give up, especially since pizza was one of my go-to foods. I would eat it every day, all day. And for variety, I would just get different toppings and get it from different pizzerias or make it myself. So I definitely was dealing with an addiction. And some people are basically admitting they have an addiction. A lot of people used to say that to me all the time. Oh, you must have a lot of discipline. And I'm like, no, you don't need discipline. You only need discipline in the first couple weeks. Really, after that, it's a lot easier. And the discipline factor, it's more of getting a routine going. And that takes about another, 3 months, maybe a little bit more for some people. Some people, maybe it goes up to 5 or 6 months. But if they can get to the top of that mountain, there's no real work involved. And it's relatively easy to maintain that way of eating. And that's the beautiful thing about a carnivore diet is it's a sustainable way of eating. Lots of people think it's not sustainable, but it's one of the easiest ways of eating I've ever done in my life. And so you have to stop and ask yourself, what is it that's preventing you from either upping your carnivore game to becoming extremely strict, or even just starting a carnivore diet and you keep starting and stopping. I did that myself for a long time. So let's break down just a few quick tips that we can do to manage either getting more strict with carnivore or just starting carnivore and being more consistent with it. Because it comes down to consistency. You're never going to get to the top of that mountain unless you keep climbing. And it's going to take a lot of work in the beginning, but seriously, it pays off in dividends once you get there. And the constant feedback you're going to get from your body as you stay consistent with it, because you're either losing weight or your health problems are going away, is going to be great motivation, especially after you get rid of the first couple of weeks of sugar and carbohydrate cravings. So I would say one of the first things is to know yourself. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses. If you think you have certain trigger foods, stay away from those trigger foods. If you think your habit is ordering food in or stopping at a grocery store and you can't help but stop and get something once you're at that grocery store, don't go to that grocery store anymore. Just change your habits. Know what your weaknesses are. And so that way you can prevent yourself from having to deal with those weaknesses. It gets easier over time and it doesn't take a lot of time. The other thing is to clearly remove temptations. So if you're living in a house with other people, you may have to ask for their support, but remove those temptations. If you know you have a bunch of ketchup in the fridge and you just can't part with throwing that stuff out, well, you're in the wrong mindset. You don't hear about smokers that still have a carton of cigarettes in their freezer or in their fridge. And they're like, well, you know what? I just can't throw those out. I'm quitting though, but I'm not going to throw those out. It's not how it works. if you can, get rid of that stuff. Your family will understand for the first couple of weeks when you're breaking up with that you can just not have that stuff around. Simple as that. They can cope. Set clear goals. I can't stress that enough. You can't just live in a dream world where you're like, I'm going to do this and be full of zeal, but at the same time, not have the goals in place, because the difference between a goal and a dream is a goal is something that you have written down and you have a schedule. All you need to do is make it through each day, whether you're trying to be extremely strict or you're trying to give up dairy or you just have to start a carnivore diet. You have to have realistic goals set up for yourself. And I recommend taking those goals one day at a time. So now we're going to get to having an execution plan, because with your goals, you got to figure out how you're going to fulfill those goals. So maybe preparing food, maybe cooking a few days worth of food all at once, say burger patties, something nice and simple. It could be your go-to food. And that way the red meat and the higher fat will keep you more satiated. If you know that you can have chicken, as I had for lunch today, I'm going to be hungry by tonight. And I'm fine with that because I know myself and I can easily manage that hunger, and I can either have a snack later or just not eat. But if I get to the point where I'm starting carnivore or I'm trying to say cut out dairy and I'm not staying full on the things that normally keep me full for a long window of time, kind of setting myself up for disaster. So what we've been doing here is talking about setting up new habits. You're getting rid of old habits and you're replacing them with new habits. So this applies to everyone who's trying to get strict. Life gets a lot easier when you have food on hand, because that way, every time you open the fridge, you can grab one of those things. I highly recommend not letting yourself get hungry while you're trying to sharpen your carnivore game. Changing your perception will change your willpower. This is something that's going to build day after day of you being strict on a carnivore diet. The work is only in the beginning. After that, you have momentum with you. You have everything you need because now your perception has changed. Your viewpoint on what you can and can't handle is going to be different. You know what your strengths and weaknesses are now. So you want to try and work with those strengths and weaknesses, because it's not done. It's just a heck of a lot easier. So no, you don't need a lot of discipline in the long run. You only need it in the very beginning, and everyone's a little different. Some people, they can just do it like that and it's no big deal. Other people, it might take a few weeks for the physical cravings to go away, and it might take a few months for the habitual cravings to go away, the habits that we have, maybe relaxing on a long weekend or going to someone's birthday party or whatever it is, where you're going to be in a tempting situation, going to a barbecue. So you got to watch that. Family get-togethers, you just might need to avoid some of those situations, or when you get there full. So that requires having a backup plan. Having a backup plan is always key in the beginning. Well, I'm at the point where I've been doing carnivore strict for over 2.5 years. So I would rather just not eat if I'm in a situation that might have once felt tempting to me, because I might be at someone's house and I see some really good looking whatever, bread or dessert, and I might have given in thinking it's just this one time. And that goes back to rule number 1, know yourself. I know myself well enough now to know I'm not going to give in to those temptations. I'd rather just not eat. And that's a pretty great place to be. The beauty of carnivore is once you've adapted to it, you can go long windows of time without eating. And after that, it's just a mind game. So please keep these tips in mind. It applies to everybody out there. And I'm telling you, it doesn't take long to get to that point where you don't have to worry about slipping and falling off the wagon. And like I've said, that applies both to starting carnivore or being consistent with carnivore once you've been doing it for a long time. So thanks, of course, for watching to the end. I really appreciate it. Take care and give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks a lot.